History is not a settled story, but a puzzle missing crucial pieces. A single artifact can shatter our deepest beliefs about ancient civilizations, forcing experts to rewrite textbooks overnight. We will explore 23 discoveries that did exactly that, challenging archaeology's greatest theories and revealing a past far stranger than we ever imagined. By the end, you will see human history in a completely new light. What secrets lie hidden beneath a Turkish hillside? And why would hunter-gatherers build a temple complex thousands of years before anyone thought possible? How much of what we think we know about the past is simply waiting to be proven wrong? Off the coast of a small Greek island, a team of sponge divers descended into the deep in the year 1901. Expecting only the seafloor, they instead found the ghostly outline of a Roman-era shipwreck, its wooden hull long since eaten away, leaving a scattered treasure trove of marble and bronze statues half buried in the sediment. Among these artifacts, they pulled up a lump of heavily corroded bronze and wood that seemed unremarkable, almost like a piece of rock. It was set aside for nearly a year, a curious but misunderstood object. Then a museum employee noticed a gear wheel peeking out from a crack in the corrosion. This was not a rock, it was a machine, now known as the Antikythera Mechanism. This complex device, dating to around 100 years before the Common Era, is considered the world's first known analog computer. When researchers painstakingly reconstructed its inner workings, they found an intricate clockwork of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, housed in a wooden case no larger than a shoebox. By turning a hand crank on the side, the user could make dials and pointers move across several faces, predicting the movements of the sun and moon, the phases of the lunar cycle, and even the timing of solar and lunar eclipses decades into the future. It was a portable, mechanical universe. The true shock for archaeologists came from one specific component, a system of gears called a differential. This was a level of engineering precision that historians were certain did not exist until the 16th century, over 1,500 years later. The existence of the Antikythera Mechanism shattered the comfortable narrative that ancient technology was primitive. How could a society capable of such intricate machinery leave behind almost no trace of that knowledge? It forced a complete re-evaluation of the technological capabilities of the Hellenistic world, suggesting a golden age of mechanical science that was almost entirely lost. This single device, salvaged from the seafloor, poses a haunting question. If this one masterpiece survived by pure chance, what other revolutionary inventions from antiquity have vanished without a trace, waiting to be found? That single corroded gear from the sea hinted at a lost technological world, but on a windswept hill in Turkey, an even deeper mystery was literally pushing its way out of the earth. In 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt visited a site long dismissed as a medieval cemetery. He saw limestone slabs poking through the soil, and he instantly knew this was something far more ancient. What he had found would dismantle one of archaeology's most foundational stories. This was Göbekli Tepe, a sprawling complex of stone rings built around 11,600 years ago. That date is staggering. It means this temple was constructed a full 6,000 years before Stonehenge by people who were still hunter-gatherers. The conventional wisdom had always been clear and logical. First, humans discovered agriculture. Farming produced a surplus of food, which allowed people to settle down in villages. With settled life came specialization, social hierarchy, and finally, the spare time and resources to build massive monuments and develop complex religion. Göbekli Tepe turns that entire sequence on its head. Here, massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing 20 tons, were carved from solid rock, transported nearly a quarter-mile, and erected in precise circles. They are covered in exquisite, artistic carvings of foxes, scorpions, and vultures. This was not the work of a simple, nomadic band. It required a sophisticated level of organization, a shared belief system, and a coordinated labor force that could only be mobilized for a powerful, common purpose. The implication is revolutionary. Perhaps it was the need to build and maintain this sacred site that forced people to settle. Perhaps they needed to feed the hundreds of workers, which provided the incentive to cultivate wild grains, inventing agriculture out of necessity. The temple came first and the farm followed. This single site forces us to ask a profound question about human nature. Did we create gods because we were settled and safe, or did we first come together to worship, and in doing so, invent civilization itself? The silent, carved pillars of Göbekli Tepe offer no easy answers, only a challenge to everything we thought we knew about our own beginnings. The silent stones of Göbekli Tepe had already shattered the timeline of civilization, but another monument, far more famous, was about to reveal its own impossible age. Standing guard on the Giza Plateau, the Great Sphinx presents a face of timeless certainty, its features weathered by countless desert storms. For generations, Egyptologists were confident they knew its story, attributing its creation to the Pharaoh Khafre around 2,500 years before the Common Era. But in the early 1990s, a geologist named Robert Schoch looked past the familiar lion's body and human head and saw something the archaeologists had missed. He was not studying art or inscriptions. He was reading the stone itself. Schoch identified deep, vertical fissures and undulating, scooped-out hollows on the Sphinx and its surrounding enclosure walls. To his trained eye, these were not the patterns of wind and sand. This was water erosion, the kind caused by thousands of years of heavy, relentless rainfall. The problem was stark and immediate. The climate of Egypt has been intensely arid since at least 5,000 years before the Common Era. For the Sphinx to exhibit such weathering, it must have been carved not during a time of deserts, but during a much wetter epoch, a period that ended around 5,000 years before the Common Era or even earlier. His radical conclusion sent shockwaves through the field. The Sphinx was not 4,500 years old. It could be 7,000, 9,000, or even older. This was not a minor adjustment. It was a chronological earthquake. If Schoch was right, it meant a sophisticated culture with the architectural prowess to carve a 240-foot-long monument from the living rock existed in Egypt millennia before the first pyramids were even a concept. Who were these people? What happened to their civilization? The debate that followed was fierce and remains unresolved. Traditional Egyptologists point to a lack of cultural evidence, like pottery or tools, from such an early period. They stand by the archaeological context that links the Sphinx to Khafre's complex. The geologists, however, stand by the stone, arguing that the weathering patterns do not lie. This clash between two sciences forces us to confront a haunting possibility. Could the Sphinx be the sole, weathered survivor of a lost golden age, a civilization so ancient that its very name has been erased from history by the shifting sands of time? The stones of Giza whisper of lost ages, but a piece of parchment from a dusty library would scream the same impossible truth. In 1929, scholars sifting through the old imperial palace in Istanbul made a discovery that would make cartographers question everything. It was a map drawn on gazelle skin by the Ottoman admiral Piri Reis in 1513. At first glance, it was a remarkable document of its era, showing the newly discovered coasts of the Americas. But a closer look revealed details that defied all logic. The map depicted the eastern coast of South America with a startling accuracy that European explorers would not achieve for another century. And then there was the landmass to the south. It showed a coastline connecting to South America, a land that should not have been on any map for another 300 years. This was the northern coastline of Antarctica. The problem is not just that Antarctica was officially unknown in 1513. The true shock is that the map shows Antarctica not as it appears today, a continent buried under miles of solid ice, but as it might have looked thousands of years ago when its shores were actually free of ice. Piri Reis himself wrote notes on the map, stating he had compiled it from many source maps, including some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. This admission opens a door to a staggering possibility. The knowledge encapsulated on this skin parchment did not come from the admiral's own voyages. It was copied from far older charts, maps created by an unknown seafaring civilization that had somehow mapped the entire globe, including a continent that would be lost to ice for millennia. How could ancient mariners have possessed such precise geographical knowledge? What kind of ships and instruments would they have needed to survey a world that history says they never knew? The Piri Reis Map stands as a silent, infuriating testament to a forgotten chapter of human exploration. It forces us to wonder if our entire timeline of discovery is just a rediscovery, a faint echo of a golden age of cartography whose masters have been completely erased from our memory. While a map suggested lost explorers, a simple clay pot from a museum shelf hinted at a power source history had forgotten. In 1938, inside the Baghdad Museum, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig made a bewildering find. He was studying a collection of unassuming terracotta jars, each about the size of a man's fist, that had been excavated from a 2,000-year-old site. These were not ordinary pots. Inside each one, a copper cylinder was carefully soldered with a 60-40 tin lead alloy, and suspended within it was an iron rod. The entire apparatus was sealed at the top with an asphalt plug, a material that is an excellent insulator. To any modern engineer, the design was instantly recognizable. It looked exactly like a primitive battery, dating to the Parthian period, somewhere between 250 years before the Common Era and 224 years of the Common Era. These objects predated the official invention of the electrical battery by Alessandro Volta in 1800 by well over a millennium. The principle is simple yet brilliant. If you were to fill such a jar with an acidic electrolyte, something as common as vinegar or lemon juice, a chemical reaction would occur. The acidic liquid would interact with the two different metals, the copper and the iron, causing electrons to flow and creating a small electrical charge between them. Replicas built based on this design have consistently generated around 1 to 2 volts of electricity. That is enough to produce a faint but tangible tingle or to power a small light bulb in a demonstration. So what were these ancient batteries used for? The truth is, we still do not know for certain. One compelling theory is that they were used for electroplating, the process of depositing a thin layer of one metal, like gold, onto the surface of another, like silver. This was a known practice in the region for creating intricate jewelry. A small, consistent electrical current would have been perfect for this delicate task. Other theories are more speculative, suggesting the gentle shock could have been used for medical purposes as a sort of analgesic, or even in religious rituals to create a mysterious, divine sensation for temple worshippers. The absence of wires or any clear electrical load makes the mystery even deeper. The Baghdad Battery forces a profound shift in perspective. It is not just a question of what this single device did, but what it represents. If one civilization understood the principles of electrochemistry 2,000 years ago, how far did that knowledge spread? What other applications, now lost to time, might they have discovered? This humble clay pot challenges the very backbone of our technological timeline, suggesting that the spark of electricity may have been struck not in the age of industry, but in the dimly lit workshops of the ancient world. A different kind of mystery lies locked within the pages of a book that no one on Earth can read. In 1912, a Polish book dealer named Wilfred Voynich acquired a peculiar 240-page codex, a manuscript written on vellum and filled from edge to edge with a script that has baffled every expert who has ever laid eyes on it. This is the Voynich Manuscript, and its text is composed of unknown characters that flow in a seemingly grammatical structure, yet they form words that match no known language on Earth. For over a century, the world's top cryptographers, including the very codebreakers who cracked Axis ciphers during the Second World War, have thrown their expertise at this puzzle. They have employed sophisticated computer algorithms designed to detect patterns in any human language, yet the manuscript's code remains unbroken. Its resistance is so complete that it almost feels intentional, as if the author built a lock with no key. The words themselves are only half the enigma. The pages are illustrated with bizarre and beautiful drawings that deepen the mystery. There are detailed paintings of plants that do not exist, with leaves and flowers unlike any known species. There are astronomical charts showing celestial bodies and constellations that do not align with our night sky. Perhaps most strangely, there are intricate diagrams of nude female figures bathing in or connected by networks of tubes and channels filled with a strange green liquid. Does this depict a lost biological process, an alchemical recipe, or a symbolic representation of something we can no longer comprehend? The theories attempting to explain its origin are as wild as its contents. Some argue it is an elaborate and masterful hoax from the 15th century, created to defraud a wealthy patron. Others suggest it is written in a constructed language, or in a coded form of a known tongue so complex that it has yet to be unraveled. More speculative minds have even proposed it is a relic of a lost culture or something not of this world. The Voynich Manuscript is a profound lesson in humility. It sits in a university library, completely accessible, its entire contents digitized and available for anyone to study, and yet its secrets remain stubbornly out of reach. It challenges our modern arrogance, proving that a single book from the past can still defy the collective intelligence of the present. If we cannot even read a book from our own planet's history, what other forms of knowledge and communication have been permanently lost to time? This textual puzzle leads us to another discovery, one not written in an unreadable language, but carved into a stone with a message that seems deliberately meant to be found. Deep in the lush jungles of Costa Rica, a different kind of puzzle was emerging from the soil, one of perfect geometry. During the 1930s, as workers cleared land for banana plantations, their machetes struck something far harder than tree roots. They began unearthing hundreds of stone spheres, perfectly round and impossibly smooth. These were not small trinkets. They ranged from the size of a tennis ball to colossal orbs over 6 feet in diameter, weighing as much as 2 full-grown elephants. The local Dikwis culture created them over a period spanning from 300 years before the Common Era to 1500 years of the Common Era. The material itself, a hard stone called gabbro, presents the first layer of the mystery. Using only other stones as tools, how did these artisans achieve such flawless spherical perfection? Modern engineers who have examined them note that many are so precise that their spheres deviate by less than 2 millimeters, a level of accuracy that seems to defy the presumed limitations of Stone Age technology. The process would have been agonizingly slow. workers likely selected a large boulder, fractured it with heat, and then patiently pecked and ground it into shape with other rocks, constantly checking its form. But the creation was only half the battle. How did they move these multi-ton spheres from their quarries through dense, uneven jungle to their final resting places? We can imagine teams of people using log rollers and rope, a monumental logistical feat requiring a commander with a clear vision and the authority to direct a massive workforce. The purpose of these spheres is a debate that still echoes through archaeology. Some were found arranged in alignments that correspond to astronomical events, suggesting they were a kind of stone calendar. Others were placed near important buildings, perhaps as symbols of power and status for chieftains. Many were found in groups, forming geometric patterns on the landscape whose original meaning is now lost. The existence of the spheres forces us to completely reconsider the Dikwis people. They were not a simple, isolated tribe. The coordination, mathematical understanding, and persistent effort required to produce these objects points to a complex, stratified society with specialized artisans and a powerful central authority. This was a level of social organization that experts did not believe existed in the region at that time. The silent, perfect spheres stand as a testament to a lost science. They challenge our neat categories of primitive and advanced, forcing us to ask what other sophisticated engineering projects, now reclaimed by the jungle, once defined the ancient Americas. A different kind of precision was being etched into the earth of Peru, on a scale so vast it defied human sight. In 1927, a Peruvian archaeologist named Toribio Mejia Zesp was hiking through the foothills bordering a stark desert plateau when he noticed something strange. Stretching across the plains below were long, straight lines carved into the landscape, running for miles across the barren ground. He was the first to document them systematically, but from his ground-level perspective, he could only grasp fragments of a much grander design. These were the Nazca Lines, and their true, breathtaking form was a secret the desert had kept for over 2,000 years. The mystery began to truly unfold in the 1930s as commercial airplanes started traversing the Peruvian coast. Pilots looked down and saw what those on the ground could not, a sprawling canvas of colossal art. The entire plateau was covered in hundreds of geometric figures, trapezoids, triangles, and spirals, alongside immense drawings of a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, and a condor with a wingspan that would dwarf a modern jetliner. The largest of these figures stretches over 1,200 feet long. The Nazca people created these geoglyphs between 500 years before the Common Era and 500 years of the Common Era through a remarkably simple yet enduring technique. They carefully removed the top layer of dark, sun-oxidized stones to expose the lighter, sandy-colored soil beneath. The arid, windless climate of the region has preserved these precise lines for millennia. But this technical explanation only deepens the central enigma. Why would a people invest such immense, coordinated effort into creating magnificent artworks they could never hope to see in their entirety? From the ground, the lines appear as little more than shallow grooves or paths. Their full, stunning impact is only visible from hundreds of feet in the air. This paradox has fueled countless theories about their purpose. Some researchers argue the lines functioned as a giant astronomical calendar, aligned with solstices and celestial bodies. Others see them as sacred pathways used for ritual processions, where walking the lines themselves was a spiritual act that connected the people to their gods. The most controversial idea, popularized in the 1960s, suggested the wide, straight lines were runways for alien spacecraft. While this extraterrestrial hypothesis is largely dismissed by scholars, its persistence highlights how thoroughly the lines challenge our understanding. The most compelling explanations point inward to the Nazca worldview. Perhaps these were not images meant for human eyes at all, but messages and offerings intended for deities in the sky. The figures could be spiritual symbols, clan totems, or prayers for water, made visible to the gods who alone had the vantage point to appreciate them. The Nazca Lines force a profound shift in how we view ancient ingenuity. They represent a form of technology, not of machinery, but of landscape and belief. They required no flight, but an incredible feat of communal planning, mathematical precision, and a cosmological vision that could conceptualize a design on a scale they would never physically witness. This act of faith carved into the desert floor asks us a difficult question. How much of our own world is built on things we cannot see, but believe in so deeply that we shape the very earth in their image? The silent perfection of the spheres and the desert canvas of Nazca show a mastery of landscape, but another island on the opposite side of the ocean held a secret buried in plain sight. For centuries, the world knew the stone giants of Easter Island only by their brooding, giant heads, their solemn faces staring inland from their stone platforms. They were iconic yet incomplete. In 2012, a team from the Easter Island Statue Project began excavating around 2 of the monumental heads. As they carefully dug, they uncovered not a simple base but shoulders, then a chest, then a full torso descending deeper and deeper into the earth. The famous heads were not heads at all. They were the tops of colossal, full-bodied statues, many with their bases buried as much as 30 feet underground. The scale of the Moai was suddenly, dramatically doubled. The newly revealed bodies were covered in intricate, previously unknown petroglyphs, carvings etched into their backs that depicted crescent symbols believed to represent the canoes of the Polynesian ancestors who settled the island. These were not just monolithic portraits, they were complex historical documents, their stories hidden by centuries of soil accumulation. This single discovery upended decades of speculation about how the Rapa Nui people moved these multi-ton figures across the island. The prevailing theory involved rocking the statues side to side in a walking motion, but the excavation revealed the statues were sculpted with a pronounced belly that shifts their center of gravity downward, and their bases were carefully tapered. This design suggests a more sophisticated method, perhaps one that involved levering and pivoting the figures on their rounded bases, using ropes and log supports to guide them into an upright position. The fact that they were deliberately placed in deep pits was a key part of this engineering process, providing stability and leverage for their final erection. The buried bodies also rewrite the island's environmental story. The accumulation of soil was not a sudden cataclysm but a gradual process, likely caused by deforestation and erosion that slowly engulfed the statues over generations. This paints a more complex picture of the Rapa Nui civilization, not as a people who suddenly collapsed, but as a resilient society that adapted to a changing landscape, their greatest works slowly reclaimed by the very earth they altered. The Moai now stand as a far more profound mystery. They are not just heads on the hillside, but immense figures rooted deep within the heart of the island, their full stature and hidden messages waiting just beneath our feet. If such a fundamental truth about one of the world's most famous sites remained hidden for so long, what other profound secrets are still buried, patiently waiting for a curious hand to uncover them? A lost goat, a stray rock, and the chance discovery of a cave opening in 1947 would unlock the single greatest textual treasure of the modern age. A young Bedouin shepherd named Muhammad Ed-Din Hib, searching for his animal near the ruins of Qumran, tossed a stone into a dark opening and heard the unexpected sound of shattering pottery. Climbing inside, he found a collection of clay jars, and within them, bundles of ancient leather and papyrus scrolls. He had no idea he was holding books that were over 2,000 years old, the oldest known copies of the Hebrew Bible in existence. This initial find would spark a decade of searches, ultimately yielding around 900 documents from 11 different caves, a collection we now know as the Dead Sea Scrolls. These texts were painstakingly copied by a devout Jewish sect, likely the Essenes, between the 3rd century before the Common Era and the 1st century of the Common Era. They were hidden away for safekeeping as Roman legions advanced, waiting in the dry desert air for 2 millennia to be found. The contents of these scrolls sent a shockwave through the world of biblical scholarship. Here were versions of the books of Isaiah, Deuteronomy, and Psalms that were a full 1,000 years older than any previously known Hebrew manuscript. Scholars had assumed the biblical text had been transmitted with near-perfect accuracy over the centuries, a stable and unchanging anchor of faith. The Dead Sea Scrolls shattered that assumption. They revealed a living, breathing textual tradition with fascinating variations. Some passages were worded differently, others were arranged in a new order, and a few contained extra lines that had been completely lost to time. This was not evidence of error, but of a period when the biblical canon was still, in some ways, fluid and dynamic. The revolution did not stop with the familiar books of the Bible. The caves also yielded a wealth of previously unknown texts, the sectarian writings of the community that preserved them. There were rules for their unique communal life, interpretations of biblical prophecy, and vivid apocalyptic visions describing a final war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. These documents pulled back the curtain on the incredibly diverse world of Second Temple Judaism, a landscape filled with competing sects, each with their own interpretations and messianic expectations. It was within this fervent, fragmented world that the earliest Christian movements emerged. The scrolls provided the essential historical backdrop, showing that ideas like a messianic figure, ritual purification, and a final judgment were not invented by a single new religion, but were part of a rich, pre-existing Jewish dialogue. The discovery forced a complete and humbling reassessment of Western religious history. It proved that the roots of both modern Judaism and Christianity were far more complex and intertwined than anyone had previously dared to believe. The Dead Sea Scrolls stand as a powerful reminder that our most sacred histories are not frozen in stone, but are stories rescued from caves, waiting to tell us new truths about who we are and where we came from. While the Dead Sea Scrolls revealed the fluidity of sacred texts, an entirely different kind of army was standing in silent formation beneath the Chinese soil. In the spring of 1974, a group of farmers digging a well outside the city of Zion struck not water, but the terracotta shoulder of a life-sized soldier. This accidental find would soon expose one of the most breathtaking archaeological discoveries of all time, the subterranean legion of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. What they had uncovered was not a handful of statues, but a sprawling, underground military complex designed to protect the emperor in the afterlife. The sheer scale was immediately overwhelming. Excavations revealed not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of meticulously crafted clay soldiers, each one standing over 6 feet tall. They were not generic, mass-produced dolls. As archaeologists brushed away the earth, they were met with a gallery of individual faces. Every single soldier possessed unique facial features, distinct hairstyles, and expressions ranging from youthful determination to seasoned resolve. This was an army of individuals, a frozen portrait of a real military force, complete with infantry, archers, cavalrymen, and charioteers, all arranged in precise, battle-ready formations. The logistical achievement was staggering. The entire project, dating to around 210 years before the Common Era, required an army of artisans and laborers working for decades. The figures were created using an early form of assembly line production, with standardized body parts like torsos and legs being made from molds, but the heads, faces, and hands were all individually sculpted and attached, ensuring no two soldiers were exactly alike. They were then painted in vivid, lifelike colors, making the silent ranks appear chillingly real. Beyond the soldiers, the complex included terracotta horses, fully functional bronze chariots with intricate working parts, and even figures of acrobats and government officials, creating a complete microcosm of the emperor's court. The level of organization and resource mobilization revealed by the Terracotta Army forced a complete rewrite of Qin dynasty history. This was not a primitive, early empire. It was a superpower, a state with the administrative genius to coordinate 70,000 workers, the artistic mastery to create portraits in clay, and the technological prowess to fire thousands of such massive figures in enormous kilns without a single one exploding. The emperor's tomb itself, a vast, unexcavated mound nearby, is said by ancient texts to contain a miniature universe with rivers of flowing mercury and a ceiling studded with pearls for stars. If his protective army is this magnificent, what impossible wonders still lie buried, waiting for the day we possess the technology and courage to open the final door? The silent legions of the Terracotta Army demonstrated the power of a single emperor, but a different kind of stone would unlock the voices of an entire civilization. In 1799, a French soldier named Pierre-François Bouchard was overseeing repairs to a fort near the Egyptian town of Rosetta. His men were dismantling an old wall when their tools struck a large, dark slab of basalt. As the dust cleared, Bouchard saw that its surface was covered in writing, not in one but 3 distinct scripts. He immediately grasped the staggering potential of this find. This was the Rosetta Stone, and it held a decree from 196 years before the Common Era, carved by priests to honor the pharaoh Ptolemy V. The top section was written in the elegant pictorial hieroglyphs of the formal Egyptian script. The middle was in Demotic, a cursive script used for everyday documents. The bottom was in ancient Greek, a language scholars could already read. The stone was a linguistic key, a single message repeated in 3 different locks. For centuries, hieroglyphs had been a complete mystery, their meaning lost after the last pagan temples closed in the 4th century. Scholars saw them as pure symbolism, a collection of mystical pictures with no connection to a spoken language. The Rosetta Stone offered a way to test that assumption. The race was on to decipher it. The breakthrough came from a French scholar named Jean-François Champollion, a linguistic prodigy who had devoted his life to the puzzle. He focused on the royal names like Ptolemy and Cleopatra, which were enclosed in oval loops called cartouches. By comparing how these names were written in the known Greek to the hieroglyphic signs, he began to isolate phonetic values. He realized that hieroglyphs were not just symbols, they also represented sounds, a hybrid system of logograms and phonetics. In 1822, after years of painstaking work, Champollion successfully deciphered the entire system, finally giving a voice to the silent pharaohs and their people. The impact was immediate and revolutionary. Egyptology was transformed overnight from a field of speculation into a true historical science. Suddenly, the thousands of inscriptions covering temple walls, tomb paintings, and papyrus scrolls could be read. The history of Egypt was no longer written by its Greek and Roman visitors, but by the Egyptians themselves. This self-recorded history revealed a civilization of astonishing sophistication, with complex administrative systems, rich poetry, advanced medical knowledge, and a profound, intricate religion. The decipherment forced a humbling reassessment of European assumptions about African civilizations. It proved that ancient Egypt was not a land of silent, primitive mystery, but a literate, bureaucratic, and deeply philosophical society whose achievements rivaled those of Greece and Rome. The Rosetta Stone stands as a permanent monument to a single truth, that a single key can unlock a lost world, proving that even the most impenetrable mysteries will eventually yield their secrets to persistent curiosity. A child's innocent gaze saw what the world's leading experts refused to believe. While exploring a cave on his family's property in northern Spain, a young girl looked up and pointed, exclaiming, "Papa, look, oxen." Her father, amateur archaeologist Marcelino Sanz de Sotchuola, lifted his lantern and was stunned by the spectacle unfolding across the cavern ceiling. Towering above them were magnificent, life-sized paintings of bison, their forms rendered in vibrant shades of red and black, with powerful muscles and expressive eyes that seemed to breathe in the flickering light. This was the Cave of Altamira, and Sotchuola was certain these masterpieces were the work of prehistoric artists. In 1879, he presented his findings to the scientific establishment, confident he had uncovered a watershed moment in human history. The response was a wall of unified, derisive skepticism. The very idea was deemed impossible. Leading authorities, convinced that ancient humans were brutish and primitive, argued that such sophisticated art could not have been created by cave dwellers. They accused Sotchuola of forgery or of being duped by a modern artist. The paintings were too beautiful, too artistically advanced. They displayed a masterful use of perspective, subtle shading to create volume, and a genius for incorporating the cave's own natural bulges and contours into the animals' bodies, making the bison appear to surge from the rock itself. How could Ice Age hunters struggling for survival possibly possess such refined aesthetic sense and technical skill? For 20 years, Sotchuola faced this wall of professional scorn, his discovery dismissed as an anomaly or a hoax. It was only after his death, with the subsequent discovery of similar painted caves in France like La Mouth, that the scientific community was forced into a humbling admission. The art was authentic, dating back approximately 36,000 years to the Upper Paleolithic era. This was not the doodling of simpletons. It was the work of accomplished artists with a deep understanding of their subjects and a desire to create lasting beauty deep within the earth. The acceptance of Altamira triggered a revolution in anthropology. It shattered the myth of the grunting, intellectually stunted caveman. Our ancient ancestors were not just smart enough to hunt and make tools, they possessed complex symbolic thought, a rich inner world, and an artistic capability that rivals any modern painter. This forces a profound reconsideration of human cognitive evolution, the impulse to create art to represent the world symbolically and to seek beauty is not a recent luxury of civilized life. It is an ancient, fundamental part of what makes us human, a spark of genius that was already burning brightly in the darkness of a Spanish cave, waiting for a child's eyes to see it at last. The vibrant art of the caves revealed a deep human spirit, but an entire city's soul was waiting beneath the silent sea. For over 1,000 years, the legendary port of Heracleion was little more than a name in a few ancient texts, a place of myth where the hero Heracles was said to have first set foot in Egypt. Historians debated whether it had ever existed at all. Then, in the year 2000, after years of systematic search, underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio and his team saw a colossal stone face emerge from the murky darkness off the Egyptian coast. The seabed was not barren. It was a graveyard of giants. They began pulling 16-foot-tall statues of pharaohs and queens from the sediment, their features still perfectly carved. They found the ruins of a grand temple dedicated to the god Ammon, surrounded by the wreckage of 64 ancient ships, gold coins, and everyday objects frozen in time. This was not a scattered shipwreck. It was an entire metropolis lost to the Mediterranean for over 1,200 years. Known as Thonis to its Egyptian builders, this city was the mandatory gateway for all trade between the Greek world and the Nile. Every ship, every merchant, every diplomatic envoy had to pass through its harbors, making it a bustling, cosmopolitan hub where cultures fused. Its catastrophic disappearance around the 8th century of the Common Era was likely caused by a devastating earthquake. The ground beneath Heracleion was primarily soft clay, and the violent tremors would have triggered a process called liquefaction, where the solid earth instantly turns into a watery slurry, swallowing everything on the surface in a single, catastrophic event. The city did not slowly erode. It was consumed. The same mud that devoured it became its perfect preserver. The oxygen-poor sediment created a time capsule, preventing organic materials like wood and leather from decaying. Archaeologists found delicate papyrus documents, intricate jewelry, and even wooden religious artifacts that would have vanished completely on land. This unparalleled preservation provided an intimate snapshot of life during the late period of ancient Egypt, a time of intense cross-cultural exchange. The discoveries here shattered the old assumption that Egyptian and Greek interactions were mostly distant and diplomatic. In Heracleion, they were deeply integrated. They found Greek weapons and armor offered as votive gifts in the main Egyptian temple, and Egyptian statues inscribed with both hieroglyphic and Greek texts. This was a city where the gods and customs of two great civilizations coexisted and blended seamlessly. The sheer scale of the port, with its immense volume of trade goods and its fleet of ships, forced a complete reassessment of Mediterranean economics. Heracleion was not a minor outpost. It was a linchpin of the ancient world's economy, a vibrant center of religious pilgrimage and commerce so vital that its sudden erasure from the map must have sent shockwaves across 2 continents. Its rediscovery is a haunting reminder that the geography of history is not fixed. A city that governed the flow of nations now lies silent under 150 feet of water, its story hidden until a team of explorers finally learned how to look down into the abyss. If a place this significant can vanish so completely, what other centers of ancient power and culture still sleep beneath the waves, waiting for their stories to be told once more? Buried beneath a Scottish field for half a century lay a slab of stone that defies simple explanation. In 1887, archaeologist Ludovic McClellan uncovered a massive sandstone panel, 42 feet long, completely covered in a breathtaking tapestry of mysterious carvings. This was the Cochno Stone. Its surface was a chaotic gallery of precise, swirling art, dominated by dozens of cup-shaped indentations surrounded by concentric rings, some with gutters trailing off like comet tails, all interspersed with spirals and labyrinthine geometric patterns. These symbols were carved around 5,000 years ago during the Neolithic period, and their sheer number is overwhelming, with over 90 distinct motifs covering the rock face. For over a century, archaeologists have stared at these symbols and seen entirely different things. Some researchers argue the complex arrangements map the heavens, a prehistoric chart of constellations or cosmic events. Others see the deep, repetitive cup marks as symbolic portals for offerings to the earth or ancestral spirits, while the connecting lines could demarcate tribal territories in a landscape without written deeds. The truth is, no single interpretation has ever gained consensus. The mystery became so profound that in 1965, the stone was deliberately reburied under a layer of turf to protect it from vandalism and weathering, its secrets hidden from view once more. It remained there, a sleeping giant, for 50 years, In 2015, a team of archaeologists undertook the monumental task of re-excavating the entire stone. Using modern technology like 3D laser scanning and high-resolution photogrammetry, they created a perfect digital twin of the massive slab. This process revealed details invisible to the naked eye, subtle tool marks and patterns worn away by millennia of Scottish rain. Yet, even with these powerful new eyes, the fundamental question remained unanswered. What were these symbols for? The Cochno Stone is a profound lesson in humility. It sits there, its entire message laid bare, and we are utterly incapable of reading it. It represents a complete breakdown in communication across 5,000 years. The people who carved this were not primitive. They were meticulous artists and thinkers with a complex symbolic language, a system of meaning that has been entirely lost. This forces us to confront a haunting possibility that some ancient artifacts may simply be untranslatable. Their purpose is locked within a world so different from our own that the key has been lost forever. The silent, swirling rings of the Cochno Stone challenge not just our theories, but our very ability to understand the minds of our distant ancestors. If we cannot decipher a message so carefully and permanently etched into the earth, what other profound truths about the human past have we already forgotten? A small wooden artifact no larger than a hand sat quietly in a museum collection for decades after its discovery in 1898. It was found in a tomb at Saqqara, a burial site for the ancient dead, and was simply catalogued as a bird figurine. But this object, carved around 200 years before the Common Era, held a secret in its silhouette that would take nearly a century to understand. When researchers finally looked past its classification, they saw something impossible. The wings were not shaped like a bird's wings. They were aerodynamically contoured, with a distinct cross-section designed to generate lift as it moves through the air, a principle fundamental to modern aircraft design. The body was not just a stylized bird body. It featured a vertical tail fin, a stabilizer that keeps an aircraft pointed straight, and there is even a socket at the rear suggesting it once had a separate horizontal tail plane. This was not merely a carving of a creature that flies. It was a carefully engineered model of a flying machine. The official explanation from Egyptology remains that the object is a ceremonial representation of a bird, perhaps a falcon, with the separate tailpiece being a purely decorative element. Yet this interpretation fails to fully explain the precision of its aerodynamic form. To test the theory, aviation enthusiasts and engineers have built precise, scaled-up replicas of the Saqqara Bird. When launched, these models do not tumble or stall. They glide. They exhibit stable, graceful flight characteristics, demonstrating that the object's shape is functionally sound. It works. This simple, profound fact ignites a controversial but compelling question. Did the ancient Egyptian artisans who carved this object possess an intuitive, or perhaps even a studied, understanding of the principles of flight? The implications are staggering. It suggests that through meticulous observation of the natural world, perhaps watching seeds spin on the wind or birds soaring on thermals, these ancient minds might have grasped concepts of lift and stability that our historical timeline says were impossible for their era. This is not necessarily evidence of lost high technology, but rather of lost intellectual curiosity and experimentation. The Saqqara Bird challenges the very backbone of our technological history, a timeline that insists such insights were millennia away. It forces us to reconsider the innovative capacity of ancient cultures. What other brilliant engineering solutions, born from patient observation and clever hands, have we dismissed as mere art or ritual? This small wooden form asks us to look more carefully at the artifacts we think we understand. because sometimes the shape of a wing holds the blueprint for a revolution. A perfectly formed hammer was pried from solid rock that should not have held it. In 1936, near the town of London, Texas, a couple walking along a creek made a discovery that would baffle experts for decades. They found a piece of stone that had cracked open, revealing a modern-looking hammer embedded snugly within its core. The rock itself was identified as Cretaceous limestone, a formation dating back approximately 100 million years. According to every established geological timeline, this was an impossible object, a man-made tool sealed inside stone from an age when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. The hammer itself is a study in contradictions. Its metal head is composed of 96.6% pure iron, a level of purity and structural integrity that is difficult to achieve even with modern smelting. It shows virtually no signs of rust or corrosion, a phenomenon that defies its supposed million-year imprisonment. More baffling still, the wooden handle was partially coalified, a process where organic material transforms into coal, which typically requires immense pressure and geological timescales of millions of years. How could a modern-looking hammer be simultaneously encased in ancient rock and have a handle that had undergone such a profound, slow-motion transformation? The mainstream scientific explanation offers a solution to this riddle. Geologists propose that the hammer is not ancient at all, but a relatively recent tool, perhaps from the 19th century, that fell into a mineral-rich creek. Dissolved limestone then precipitated around the object, forming a hard, rock-like concretion in a matter of decades or centuries, not millennia. This process can mimic the appearance of solid, ancient stone, creating a convincing but entirely misleading geological context. For those who challenge conventional history, however, this explanation feels insufficient. They point to the purity of the iron and the coalified wood as evidence that the object itself is genuinely ancient, suggesting the existence of a technologically advanced civilization in the deep, distant past. The true power of the London hammer is not that it proves an alternative history, but that it exposes a critical vulnerability in our own methods. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable fact that our entire understanding of the past is built upon dating techniques that can sometimes be fooled. An object's context, the rock it is found in, is our primary clue to its age. But what happens when that context is ambiguous or misleading? This single, perplexing artifact serves as a permanent cautionary tale, reminding us that the ground beneath our feet can tell more than one story, and that our scientific assumptions must always leave room for the occasional, world-shaking anomaly. While geologists debated the nature of a single carved stone in Scotland, an entire sunken cityscape was emerging from the Pacific depths. In 1986, a local diver named Kirkiro Aratake was exploring the waters off the remote Japanese island of Yonaguni, searching for new spots to observe hammerhead sharks. Instead of a rocky seabed, his eyes met a sight that defied belief. Rising from the ocean floor were colossal structures that looked like the ruins of a forgotten metropolis. He saw vast, flat platforms that resembled paved plazas, wide terraces that dropped in perfect steps, and sharp, monolithic pillars standing like sentinels in the deep. One massive formation, now called the Yonaguni Monument, stretched over 150 meters long and soared 25 meters high, its sheer faces meeting at what appeared to be precise 90-degree angles. The entire complex was a labyrinth of what looked like staircases, arched gateways, and narrow, tunnel-like passages, all carved from the solid sandstone bedrock. The immediate and fierce controversy was inevitable. Were these the ruins of a city swallowed by the sea, or simply a spectacular freak of nature? The debate split the scientific community into two impassioned camps. Geologists, led by figures like Robert Schoch, pointed to the region's powerful tectonic forces. They argued that the sandstone in this area is naturally fractured along parallel planes and joints. Over millennia, strong ocean currents could have scoured and eroded these fractures, creating the flat surfaces, sharp edges, and stepped terraces entirely through natural processes. The sheer scale and regularity of the formations, they insisted, are a testament to the immense power of non-living forces. On the other side, archaeologists and alternative researchers such as Masaki Kimura saw the unmistakable hand of human intelligence. They highlighted features that seem to have no natural explanation. There are two massive monolithic pillars that appear placed to support a ceiling in a way that mimics architectural design. There is a precise horseshoe-shaped enclosure that looks exactly like a ritual platform. Most compellingly, there is a stone that bears a striking resemblance to a human face, complete with carved eyes and a mouth, something extremely difficult to attribute to random erosion. The dating of the site adds another layer of profound mystery. Sea level rise at the end of the last ice age submerged this area around 10,000 years ago. If these structures are artificial, they were built by a sophisticated culture in a time when mainstream history tells us humans were simple hunter-gatherers, just beginning to experiment with agriculture. This would make the Yonaguni Monument the oldest known pyramid-like complex on Earth, predating the Egyptian pyramids by thousands of years. The true power of Yonaguni is not that it provides a definitive answer, but that it perfectly encapsulates the struggle of archaeological interpretation. It forces experts and enthusiasts alike to confront their own biases. Do we see a lost city because we want to see one? Or are we dismissing the ingenuity of our ancient ancestors because their achievements do not fit our established timeline? The silent, submerged stones of Yonaguni offer no easy verdict. They stand as a permanent question mark on the ocean floor, challenging us to decide where nature's artistry ends and humanity's first bold architectural dreams began. High in the mountains bordering Tibet, a different kind of stone was said to hold a secret far stranger than any carving. In 1938, the story goes, Chinese archaeologist Kai Pu-te entered a series of remote caves and found 716 stone discs, each roughly 12 inches across, with a hole in the center and a delicate spiral groove winding from the inside out. They looked almost like ancient phonograph records made of stone. The tale takes an even more incredible turn with the claim that microscopic hieroglyphic-like writing was found etched along those tiny grooves. According to sensational accounts that emerged decades later, these inscriptions were eventually translated, telling a story of the Dropa people, extraterrestrial beings whose spacecraft crashed in the mountains 12,000 years ago, leaving them stranded on our world. The stones, they said, were their recorded history. Mainstream archaeology has a very different verdict for the Dropa stones. The entire narrative is widely considered a hoax, a layered fabrication that began with a potential misinterpretation of common-by discs, a type of ancient Chinese ritual artifact, and was then amplified by sensational magazine articles in the 1960s. No reputable institution has ever verified the existence of the stones or the inscriptions, and the original archaeologist and the discs themselves have vanished into obscurity. For scholars, the case is closed. It is a textbook example of archaeological mythology, yet the story refuses to die, kept alive by a persistent undercurrent of belief and fascination. This enduring appeal reveals something profound not about ancient aliens, but about ourselves. The Dropa stones represent the ultimate clash between our desire for world-shaking mysteries and the rigorous, often slow-moving process of scientific verification. They challenge how archaeology, a field built on interpreting fragments, polices its own boundaries to separate genuine breakthroughs from elaborate stories. This controversial case study is a crucial reminder of the discipline's necessary safeguards. It underscores the importance of physical evidence, peer review, and reproducible results, the very tools that prevent fiction from being written into our history books. The stone's disputed status highlights the fine line every archaeologist must walk, a line between a mind open to revolutionary possibilities and a methodology grounded in unshakable proof. In the end, the true lesson of the Dropa stones is not about what might be hidden in a Tibetan cave, but about the stories we choose to believe and why we are so captivated by the idea that our past holds a secret dramatic enough to shatter our present. The Spanish conquistador Pedro Cieza de Leon stood before the ruins of Puma Punku in 1549, his mind struggling to categorize the devastation of stone surrounding him. These were not simple, weathered blocks. They were colossal geometric puzzles, some slabs weighing 130 tons, yet carved with a jeweler's precision. The true marvel was in the joints, seams so flawlessly cut that not even the thin blade of a razor could find purchase between them. This was not construction, it was stone fusion, a technology that seemed to belong to a different age entirely. Dating to between 536 and 600 years of the Common Era, Puma Punku was the work of the Tiwanaku culture. The stones they used, andesite and red sandstone, are brutally hard materials. Andesite is a volcanic rock only slightly softer than granite, a substance that would quickly dull modern steel tools. Yet the Tiwanaku artisans shaped it into blocks with perfect, consistent right angles, surfaces as flat as polished glass, and intricate, interlocking channels that look like prefabricated components for some colossal machine. They drilled perfectly cylindrical holes and carved uniform, repeating geometric patterns with a consistency that suggests the use of templates, a level of industrial standardization that feels utterly anachronistic. The central, baffling question is how they achieved this with the tools history grants them. This was a society without a written language, without the wheel, and without hardened metal tools beyond simple copper implements. A copper chisel would be useless against andesite, blunting after a few ineffective strikes. So how did they cut it? How did they transport these multi-ton blocks from quarries over 50 miles away, across a rugged, high-altitude landscape without wheels or draft animals? The sheer logistical and engineering feat is staggering, a symphony of coordinated labor and technical knowledge that we can scarcely comprehend. This gap between presumed capability and actual achievement has predictably spawned dramatic theories. Some point to the impossible precision as evidence of a lost ancient technology, perhaps even machinery powered by a forgotten energy source. Others, looking at the site's otherworldly appearance, have suggested extraterrestrial guidance. For mainstream archaeologists, the explanation lies in something both simpler and more profound: the immense power of human ingenuity, patience, and accumulated stone-working knowledge passed down through generations. They propose that workers used painstaking abrasion techniques, grinding the stone for countless hours with simple stone hammers and sand, achieving perfection through an almost unimaginable investment of time and effort. Yet, even this reasonable explanation cannot fully quiet the sense of awe. Puma Punku stands as a permanent challenge to our assumptions about technological progress. It forces us to ask if our linear timeline of invention is fundamentally flawed. Could a culture achieve a zenith of engineering mastery in one specific area, like stonework, without the suite of technologies we consider prerequisites? The silent, immaculate stones suggest that the human capacity for precision is not dependent on the tools in hand, but on the vision in the mind. This same drive for impossible perfection would find another expression far across the world, hidden deep within a mountain. A different kind of carving would ignite a firestorm of controversy, one that pitted dramatic imagery against scientific skepticism. In 1966, a Peruvian physician named Javier Cabrera Darquia began acquiring a collection of stones that would eventually number in the thousands. These were not ordinary river rocks. Each one was covered in intricate, deep-line engravings depicting scenes that seemed to tear pages from a science fiction novel. The stones showed human figures living alongside and even battling dinosaurs like Triceratops and Stegosaurus. Other carvings illustrated advanced medical procedures, including what appeared to be complex heart surgery and cesarean sections. There were maps of unknown continents and figures using optical devices like telescopes to gaze at the stars. If these images were genuine, they would mean that an ancient civilization possessed knowledge of paleontology, medicine, and astronomy that fundamentally contradicts our entire understanding of human history. The immediate reaction from the archaeological community was one of uniform dismissal. Investigators quickly traced the source of the stones to local farmers who, when pressed, admitted to creating and carving the stones themselves, using modern tools and then aging them with livestock dung to give them a patina of antiquity. The farmers stated they were inspired by genuine pre-Columbian burial stones, but had created the more sensational imagery to sell to tourists and collectors. For most experts, the case was closed, a clear example of a modern hoax. Yet, the sheer volume of the stones, the consistency of the artistic style across thousands of examples, and the specific, sometimes anatomically correct depictions of dinosaurs continued to fuel debate among alternative history enthusiasts. The central question the Ica stones pose is not really about dinosaurs and humans, but about the very process of archaeology itself. How does the field protect itself from sophisticated forgeries designed to exploit our desire for mystery? The methodology relies on context, the location and soil layer where an object is found. But when artifacts are removed by looters and sold on the black market, that crucial context is destroyed forever. This case study serves as a critical lesson in navigating the fine line between open-minded inquiry and rigorous evidential standards. It highlights the immense responsibility researchers have when confronting controversial finds that capture the public's imagination, demonstrating that the most compelling story is not always the true one. The stones remain a powerful symbol of a different kind of discovery, one that reveals more about our own longing for a dramatic past than about the past itself. A small pond in rural China was hiding a secret of staggering proportions. In 1992, farmers in Zhejiang province decided to drain a local watering hole, expecting to find a shallow basin. Instead, as the water receded, they revealed the soaring ceiling of a vast hand-carved cavern. This was not a natural formation. The walls were smooth and angled with geometric precision, covered from floor to ceiling in a uniform pattern of parallel chisel marks. This single cave, now known as the Longyou Caves, was just the beginning. Further exploration uncovered 24 additional artificial grottos, a sprawling subterranean complex covering over 30,000 square meters. Each cavern is an architectural marvel, with immense pillars left in place to support the ceiling, stepped side rooms, and intricate drainage channels that snake along the floor. Every surface is decorated with the same relentless, parallel markings, a testament to an almost obsessive dedication to pattern and form. Based on pottery fragments found inside, we know this monumental project dates back to at least 200 years before the Common Era, around the time of the Qin dynasty. The sheer volume of rock removed is almost incomprehensible, estimated at nearly 1 million cubic meters, To put that in perspective, that is enough stone to fill over 40 modern Olympic swimming pools. The logistics are mind-boggling. This was not the work of a small village. It would have required a labor force of thousands working in organized shifts for generations, all equipped with simple iron tools. They would have needed a sophisticated system of lighting, ventilation, and engineering oversight to maintain the consistent 60-degree wall angles and prevent collapses. Yet, for an undertaking of such immense scale and importance, there is a deafening silence in the historical record. Not a single scroll, imperial edict, or local legend from the period mentions the construction of these caves. Who commissioned this Herculean effort, and why? The absence of any inscriptions, burial goods, or obvious religious iconography deepens the mystery. Were they a secret imperial quarry, a hidden military barracks, or perhaps a subterranean sanctuary for a forgotten spiritual practice? The complete lack of documentation forces a humbling admission. Our written history is not a complete archive. It is a collection of fragments that survived, and the Longyou Caves are a powerful reminder that an entire civilization's greatest achievements could be so thoroughly erased from memory that even their purpose becomes a question mark. If a project this vast could vanish from history, what other wonders from the ancient world remain hidden, waiting not to be built but simply to be remembered? A single silver coin, no larger than a fingernail, was sifted from the soil of a Native American shell midden in 1957. This was the Goddard site in Maine, a coastal trading village of the Penobscot people, a place rich with local artifacts. Yet this tiny object was an ocean away from home. Identified as a Norse penny minted during the reign of King Olaf Kyrre, it dated squarely to the 11th century, between 1067 and 1093 years of the Common Era. In that moment, a simple coin became a historical bombshell. Its discovery posed an almost philosophical riddle for archaeologists. How did a piece of Scandinavian currency end up in a pre-Columbian Native American settlement, centuries before Columbus set sail? The most thrilling explanation is that it represents genuine, if indirect, contact. Norse explorers from the settlement at Elance Ox Meadows in Newfoundland, established around the year 1000, could have traded this coin directly with indigenous peoples. Perhaps it then began a long, slow journey southward, passed from hand to hand through vast, intertribal trade networks that stretched for thousands of miles along the eastern seaboard. This single penny would then be proof that the Viking presence in North America was not an isolated, failed experiment, but a spark that ignited contact across a continent. The alternative explanation is far more cautious, yet equally fascinating. Skeptics suggest the coin could be a much later trade item, perhaps brought over by European fishermen or settlers in the 16th or 17th century, and then lost, only to be found centuries later in an ancient context. It could even be a modern contamination, accidentally dropped at the dig site by a collector or a member of the excavation team itself. This debate is not just academic bickering. It strikes at the very heart of how we build our understanding of the past from fragments. An artifact without a clear, documented context is like a word without a sentence. Its meaning becomes a matter of interpretation. The main penny forces archaeologists to hold two contradictory truths in their minds at once. It is a genuine Norse artifact from the correct time period, found in a legitimate pre-Columbian site. And yet, its story is fundamentally unverifiable. This tiny sliver of silver challenges the neat, textbook narrative of Viking exploration, pushing us to imagine a new world with more threads of contact, more strands of connection than our maps have ever shown. It demonstrates that the smallest, most mundane object can carry the weight of 1,000 ships, forcing us to reconsider not just who discovered America, but how many times and how many stories were lost along the way. That small Norse coin found in Maine embodies a profound truth about archaeology itself. Every single discovery we have explored, from the Antikythera Mechanism to the submerged city of Heracleion, did not simply add a new fact to a static story. Instead, each one acted as a tremor, challenging the very foundations of what experts thought they knew. To truly grasp why these 23 finds were so revolutionary, we need to step back and see how the entire field of archaeology evolves. It is not a steady accumulation of facts, but a story of intellectual revolutions. The process almost always begins with an anomaly, a piece of evidence that stubbornly refuses to fit the established model. Think of the initial reaction to the Cave of Altamira, when leading scholars dismissed the beautiful bison paintings as an obvious hoax because their existence contradicted the dominant image of primitive cavemen. Or consider the geologists who looked at the water erosion on the Sphinx and presented data that clashed with the official Egyptian chronology. In both cases, the new evidence created a state of cognitive dissonance within the field. The existing paradigm, the accepted framework of understanding, is a powerful force. Scholars build their careers upon it, textbooks are written around it, and entire museum exhibits are designed to support it. When a discovery like Göbekli Tepe emerges, suggesting that temple building came before agriculture, it does not just add a new chapter. It demands that we tear up the old table of contents and write a new one from scratch. This is why resistance is so often the first reaction. The discovery of Troy by Heinrich Schliemann was met with ridicule from classicists who believed Homer's Iliad was pure myth. Yet his spade unearthed a real city, forcing a complete re-evaluation of the Bronze Age. Today, genetic evidence is doing the same thing, rewriting the timeline of human migration out of Africa and across the globe with startling new details that often contradict the archaeological record alone. This tension between old models and new evidence is not a weakness of science, but its greatest strength. Eventually, if the anomalous evidence is robust and repeatable, it reaches a critical mass. The weight of the contradiction becomes too heavy for the old theory to bear. A paradigm shift occurs, a fundamental change in the basic assumptions and practices of the entire discipline. The scientific method, with its demands for verification and peer review, ensures that compelling new evidence is eventually incorporated, no matter how uncomfortable it makes the establishment. This process explains why the Baghdad Battery or the Saqqara Bird are so important. They are the anomalies that have not yet triggered a full-scale shift, but they apply constant, nagging pressure on our timeline of human innovation. They are the unanswered questions that keep archaeology alive and dynamic. Understanding this cycle of discovery, skepticism, and revolution allows us to appreciate the courage it takes to propose a radical new idea, and the humility required to accept that our current understanding of the past is always and only a working draft. This context makes every new excavation a potential earthquake, reminding us that the next world-shaking discovery might be lying in a storage drawer or buried just inches beneath our feet, waiting for someone to recognize its impossible truth. These 23 discoveries form a powerful testament to human curiosity. Each artifact, from the submerged ruins of Heracleion to the perplexing gears of the Antikythera Mechanism, did more than just add a new fact to the record. They acted as intellectual earthquakes, forcing experts to tear down old models and build new ones from the ground up. Göbekli Tepe forced us to reconsider the very engine of civilization, suggesting that the drive to worship may have planted the first seeds of farming and settled life. The Antikythera Mechanism shattered the myth of technological linearity. proving that sophisticated engineering could flourish and then vanish, leaving barely a whisper in the historical record. These finds teach us that the past is not a simple, linear progression from primitive to advanced. It is a complex tapestry of rises and falls, of brilliant innovations lost and then independently rediscovered millennia later. The field of archaeology is not a dusty library where the books are all written. It is a living, breathing science defined by its revolutions. Just as the Dead Sea Scrolls rewrote our understanding of biblical texts and the Terracotta Army redefined the power of the Qin dynasty, tomorrow's discovery will inevitably challenge today's certainties. New technologies like LiDAR and genetic analysis are already revealing lost cities in the jungles of Central America and rewriting human migration maps. The greatest lesson from all these world-shaking finds is not a specific fact about history, but a profound attitude toward knowledge itself. It is the humility to recognize that our current understanding is always a draft, subject to revision with the very next turn of the archaeologist's trowel. The human story is still being unearthed, and its next chapter is waiting just beneath the surface.